Hello, this is OC Skywatch. It is the 17th of April 2016, just after 3:30 p.m. and I haven't made a video in a while, so might as well make one now. It's going to be rather short because I have things to do. Anyways, what you're looking at is a visible satellite of the Eastern Pacific. This is April 14th going into the 15th, 21 to 030 Zulu. What you notice right off the bat is an area of cloudlessness just a little bit northeast of Hawaii. They're starting to build in a pretty strong high pressure ridge that's going to be expanding well up into Canada. This is pretty much where it started. You also notice to the southwest of this hole some weird activity, some clouds disappearing. Yeah, that's just part of the process of them building up high pressure. Of course, we see a bunch of aerosols being sprayed into this flow. That's going to help get the big high pressure going. What we do notice is a rather large area of low pressure to the north, and of course they cannot have that thing interrupt their flow, so yeah, they're using the ionospheric heaters to go and keep this at bay. What's interesting is this area of opening is not visible in the water vapor. Of course, you see chemtrails being laid into this flow right here. That's just going to help create that massive high pressure, prevent any sort of low pressures from forming in here. There is actually a low pressure over the northwest that came on shore, but unfortunately though, it's pretty distorted. This thing's going to be actually staying stationary for the next few days. Next few days relative to this time. See a bit of funny activity in there. A little bit of clockwise rotation. And you know what's funny? Always on the west side of these systems, I see a bunch of clearing. The thing is not able to, completely form into a nice spiral with clouds all around. That's what I've been noticing recently with these storm systems. It always seems that way. Anyways, just north of this flow with chemtrails in there, here's that low pressure system. It looks pretty beat up in the water vapor satellite. Heck, you even see a little bit of, is that clockwise rotation? Could be. Let's slow that down. Okay, let's move on to the sea surface pressure analysis. Notice that there's a 1031 millibar high pressure stationed just northwest of Hawaii. The high is marked exactly where that unusual clearing is. No clouds. Kind of funny. And you can see that there's a 987 millibar low pressure system. I think that's what it is. Near the Aleutian Islands. Of course, that's going to be blocked. Not going to be able to enter the west coast because they're going to be making a rather large high pressure blockade all across the west coast. It extends up into Canada, I believe. You see a low pressure right on top of Washington and Oregon. By the way, this is April 14th, 18 Zulu. I forgot to say that. Okay, let's go into the 500 millibar. This is about 6 hours before that. Forgot to update the maps. Anyways, you see pretty much the same pattern. It's only a few hours difference. There's high pressure here, major high pressure, low pressure up here near the Aleutians, and yeah, it's low pressure here, and there's actually a flow that extends into California. Unfortunately though, that didn't bring any rain. There was a lot of aerosol spraying. I'm just going to go over a few days here just because I have stuff to do. If you want to see more documentation and detail about days in between the 14th and the 17th, which is today, go check out One Pacific Redwood. He does a good job. Okay, this is the 300 millibar. Pretty much the same thing. There's low pressure here, high pressure here, but it's not marked. And of course you see the chemtrails being laid into this flow. Not too much moisture is able to make it into the west coast. A lot of aerosols, and they're probably using the ionospheric heaters as well to evaporate that moisture coming from this flow. A lot of rain we missed out on, I'll tell you that. I'm pretty sure that if there wasn't any sort of chemtrail programs or anything, there would be quite a bit of precipitation falling in the state. Okay, let's go move on. This is the storm surf global jet stream map. I did actually have a Pacific map, but unfortunately though that thing spazzed out. It actually updated, so it's not going to be showing the whole string of events that happened within the last few days. Okay, let's play this, and you can see that they're building up high pressure. This thing starts at April 14th, 12 Zulu, and okay, April 15th. See the high pressure building up. April 16th, it really starts ballooning out. April 17th, 0 Zulu. That was yesterday. It really started peaking. Look how distorted that jet stream is. It goes way up into Canada and down into a low pressure here. And of course you're going to see that low pressure, the moisture field coming from the jet stream is not being able to completely wrap around into the system. What we do notice though is a low pressure, tightly squeezed low pressure in between these two highs. There's one high here and one high right off the west coast. That's a very odd shape. It's like almost straight north and south. Okay, this is pretty much today, right now. And yeah, this thing's going to eventually break off, and don't think it's going to deliver any rain to at least Southern California. The Northwest might get some, but probably not much. You're going to see in a few minutes that there is actually quite a bit of aerosol spraying in this flow that goes up into Canada. Extremely heavy aerosol spraying off of our coast. It might be coming in a little bit later tonight. We're going to have to wait and see, but yeah, I'm telling you, it is inching towards California. Okay, let's look at the NASA Worldview for April 14th. You see that a few hundred miles off the coast of California, there's that massive opening in the clouds. That's exactly where the big high is indicated in the surface analysis. And look, this giant void. That's crazy. Okay, let's zoom in more. Little wavy formations. Anyways, yeah, you get the picture. It's a very weird opening. Here's that system going into the northwest. See a bit of opening off the coast of Washington, caused by the ionospheric heaters, I believe. There's also some chemtrails, of course, being put into the system. Who am I kidding? Almost all these storm systems nowadays have the aerosol spray in them. In Southern California, there is some natural clouds, but unfortunately though, there's quite a bit of aerosol spraying to the east of our area. Very heavy over the southern Salton Sea area. You see all these lines and soft white haze. And just off of our coast, there is some faint haze. See that? These are natural clouds right over here, and then this is just chemtrail haze. See the dirty off-white stuff? Here's the flow just north of this void. See very heavy chemtrails all throughout here. There are some natural clouds, but it's being capped off by aerosols. They don't want the clouds to turn into a nice low pressure system, disrupt their flow, create a lot of rain. Yeah, it's all throughout here. And here's this low pressure near the Aleutian Islands. It's not the most organized, and there is a lot of aerosols in there. Not much to say, really. They're laying aerosols all throughout this thing to just keep it at bay, keep it weak. That's a funny formation here. Anyways, should move on. This is a few days later, today, April 17th, 1730 to 21 Zulu, and you see that there's a tightly squeezed area of low pressure. There's actually a few low pressures in this thing. Off of the coast of California, there's a lot of heavy chemtrail spraying. It's insane. Normally these aren't visible in this view too well, but I'm telling you, the people that are photoshopping these maps, they goofed up big time today because we could see a lot of the chemtrail operations. You can see that all the chemtrails are heading pretty much to the northwest. It's getting closer to the California coast. There are some aerosols that are starting to head into northern and central California. It's not that much. Down here in Southern California, it's going to be a little while until we get some of that. I see an interesting feature just off of the coast of Southern California that appears to be the work of the ionospheric heaters pressing down some dry air. It looks like a traditional, these clouds just blowing apart in a ring shape. That's definitely evidence of ionospheric heaters being used to create this big void in the west coast. The lack of clouds. I mean, look at that. There's not many clouds. It extends from the tip of Baja all the way up into Canada. I mean, seriously, there's not really any real clouds until you get into the eastern half of Arizona and Utah. This low pressure has been stalled here for a few days. They're using the ionospheric heaters to keep this thing in place. There's actually a storm just off the east coast that they cannot allow the two moisture fields to merge, so yeah, one Pacific Redwood actually did a video showing that yesterday. He's pretty much spot on. Also, what you see is, this jet stream flow trying to bring moisture into this thing. Unfortunately, though, it's being evaporated before it's able to, go and feed the system. Anyways, though, very bizarre stuff going on. Let's go take one last view at the heavy chemtrails being laid off of the west coast. These chemtrails, I'm almost certain, are being used to keep this high pressure in place and help the ionospheric heaters to do so. Okay, let's slow this down. It's extremely heavy spraying. It's some of the heaviest I've seen in a while off of the coast. We're going to check the relative humidity maps in a second. But first, let's take a look at what's happening in water vapor mode. Okay, you see this low pressure here. It's trying to go and spin up. They held this tightly squeezed low pressure in place for a little bit too long, and look what it's doing. It's trying to, spin up into something pretty decent and bring some rain into California. Unfortunately, though, the weather controllers cannot release that. They got to kill it off and then keep this high pressure in place until that's dealt with. Also, you see what's happening here off of the west coast. There's heavy aerosols, and that's heading up to the north and then trying to go down into this low pressure system. Unfortunately, though, any moisture in there is being evaporated before it's able to loop around. I keep telling you, the west side of these systems look very strange nowadays, and it's definitely not natural. Still, though, look at the heavy aerosols. Extremely heavy. They're actually really visible off the coast of Southern California. They're being laid parallel to the flow, so they cover the greatest amount of area. Also, you can see that there's another storm trying to spin up off the Aleutian Islands. Anyways, let's move on here. This is the 1000 millibar relative humidity map for April 17th, 18 Zulu. This is the surface. By the way, we actually did have quite a bit of offshore winds as a result of this high pressure being kind of close to this low pressure here. You're going to get a northeasterly wind in Southern California. Let me actually show you the surface winds. One second. Yeah, northeast wind being caused by the high and low pressure. That explains the really dry weather we've been having for the last few days. Okay, let's go back to the relative humidity. Anyways, in most areas, the humidity is less than 20%, less than 10% in some areas to the south. It's actually really dry all along the west coast. Okay, this is the 850 millibar. And all along the west coast, from pretty much the tip of Baja all the way up to the Canadian border, humidity is less than 20% in most places at this level. And that's being caused by the ionospheric heaters along with the chemtrails, both of them causing the dryness. I would actually show you the humidity maps for the 14th. Unfortunately, though, it does not extend way out into the Pacific, so it doesn't show the humidity levels for where that big void is, where that center of the surface eye is located. Okay, moving on. Okay, this is 5,000 feet here. 700 millibars, 10,000 feet. Pretty much the same story. A lot of dry air all along the western half of the country, and it extends from Mexico all the way up to the Canadian border. Very dry, less than 20% relative humidity in most of the areas. Some areas are more moist than others, though, but still very dry in comparison to what it is in the center of the country. Okay, 500 millibars, 18,000 feet. There's a little bit of humidity at this level, but not much. Basically, the humidity, as you go further to the south, gets lower. What I do see is a very interesting tongue of dry air all along the western side of this low pressure. This low pressure has been pretty much stalled here. There's high pressure here and then high pressure here. This thing has pretty much nowhere else to go until the weather controllers go and release. You can see the system off the east coast here. one Pacific redwood was talking about. Okay, moving on. This is 300 millibars, 30,000 feet. There is still a channel of dry air on the west side of this low pressure system. It's a bit more humid at this layer on the west coast. Okay, this is the sea surface pressure analysis. This is April 17th, 18 Zulu. You see that extensive high is right off the coast now. There's a tightly packed low just a little bit west of there. Anyways, though, it extends up the west coast quite a bit. And you see the low here. Okay, this is 500 millibar, 18,000 feet. This is a few hours back, April 17th, 12 Zulu. Again, there's not really too much of a change in flow. You see what's going on here. There's a pretty strong high pressure being installed right off the west coast that's going to remove any sort of chance of precipitation. It's man-made. A little slow here and then low here. Low in the top of this. There's a low on the top of this notch. And there's a low trying to spin off the Aleutian Islands. Okay, this is 300 millibars, 30,000 feet. See, a lot of high pressure along the west coast. This tightly squeezed low pressure notch thing. Low pressure here and up towards the Aleutians again. This is currently what the jet stream looks like. There's a major distortion. You can see that there's two extensive areas of high pressure, one right here and one right here, and this jet stream flow is being squeezed right down to the south, and then it's rebounding because there's high pressure here. It's going straight to the north and then trying to head down into this low, but its moisture is definitely being cut off there. Alright, let's play this a little bit. See, eventually this thing's going to break down, but unfortunately though, I don't see this remnant of bottom half of notch thing bringing us some precipitation in Southern California. Gonna have to wait and see what happens, but I'm almost certain it's not gonna do anything. Yeah, this map's pretty much dead after plus 84 hours. See that? Plus 132 hours it goes back. That's kind of interesting. Then it fails again, plus 162 hours. Yeah, that's no good. Anyways, though, you don't see any major storms heading into the west coast within the next 180 hours. A lot of opportunity for life-giving rain is being blocked. Populations are getting screwed, and yeah, it's all really bad. Before I call it a video, let's check the NASA worldview. This is April 17th. And you can see the heavy chemtrails being laid along the west coast, starting at just a little bit south of Point Conception latitude. Here's that expanding area that I saw in the visible satellite. That's definitely evidence of ionospheric heaters being used. Of course you have a chemtrail going right through it. Yeah, there's chemtrails, extremely heavy chemtrails, all along the coast. They're starting to head inland now at this time. Definitely very bad. Okay, let's zoom in and look at this activity. Absolutely horrendous. There's not really any natural cloud cover in this area. Well, there's a few clouds, but it isn't much. A lot of these clouds have evaporated because of the use of ionospheric heaters and chemtrails drying everything out. Okay, let's pan towards the south a bit. Yeah, they're everywhere. This is the area where the chemtrails stop, but there's still massive clearing. That is totally not natural. very extensive area of cloudlessness. It's just in the northern half of this thing, a bunch of aerosol clouds. For the most part, there's not a lot of natural clouds on the west coast. You have to go all the way over here to get some clouds where this low pressure is. And even then, this low pressure is being laced with the aerosols. See this haze and stuff around. Okay, let's look at the storm pretty much over the central part of the country. Yeah, there's heavy spraying in there. Of course, you see a little wispiness and whatnot. It's all throughout this thing. And here's the storm off the east coast. It's being beaten up. A lot of opening in the clouds, especially on the northeastern end. Alright, I think I'm gonna call it a video now. I've covered pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. Thank you for watching, and please share.